After getting pressured to prove himself, the wealthy CEO got drunk, entered the wrong hotel room and woke up next to a beautiful stranger. Hello, my dearest family, my most cherished supporters. Welcome back to our home. You are not just part of this story journey. You are the reason for the journey. Your thoughts flow with mine throughout our stories. Your loyalty holds me up and your presence brings tears of gratitude to my eyes. Today I want to begin with a divine prayer for you, my family of love. Not just with words but with every fiber of my being. Oh Heavenly Father, bless every member of this beautiful family. Every subscriber and every viewer, fill their hearts with love, joy and endless peace. May their days be bright, their burdens light, and their dreams within reach. Guide us as a family united by stories and emotions, and let us always find strength in you as we go through these stories. My beautiful family, some of you have stood by me in silence and in celebration, in laughter and in pain. But recently I've noticed our views are going down day by day. YouTube even showed me that most of my loyal viewers are refusing to watch our videos, and this has made me heartbroken. I spend hours trying to craft these stories with care, making them worthy of your consumption. Throughout last night, when I should have been writing a new story, I've been so sad, thinking where I might have gone wrong that my loyal viewers have now refused to watch my videos, much less commenting and sharing with their friends. I pray for you every day, my family, because I cherish your presence here. If my words or actions have ever offended you, please let me know, and I will work on it. Please, my family, it's also my heartfelt request to you. If these stories have ever brought you comfort, joy, healing or inspiration, please invite your family and friends to join us. Together we can create a community that uplifts, inspires and spreads love through every word shared. Remember, someone out there needs this love too. You are not just subscribers, you are family, and your presence here means the world to me. And now I need your genuine answers. How do you think of my stories? Are my stories healing you, loving you, embracing you? Or is there any part you want me to improve on so you can enjoy it better? Please let me know in the comments. Please, I need your encouragements now more than ever, my family. Now you've done that, get comfortable, and let's begin with a heart full of grace and a soul drenched in love. From the rooftop bar of the Carlisle Hotel, Manhattan spread out like a glittering carpet beneath the evening sky. Crystal champagne flutes clinked together as executives in tailored suits celebrated what the financial papers would call the tech merger of the decade. At the center of it all stood Harrison Reeves. At 38, he was the brilliant yet troubled CEO of Horizon Tech. His company had just absorbed its largest competitor in a billion-dollar deal that had taken months of delicate negotiations, late nights and ethical compromises that left Harrison feeling hollow despite his public smile. To Harrison Reeves, the man who finally proved the doubters wrong, called out the CFO, raising his glass. The crowd cheered, but Harrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. He nodded politely, sipped his champagne, and glanced toward the corner where his father, Richard Reeves, patriarch of the Reeves business empire, stood whispering to Harrison's younger brothers James and Thomas. Their occasional glances in his direction made it clear he was the topic of their conversation. Harrison excused himself from a group of board members and moved to the balcony's edge. Below him, yellow taxis crawled through the city streets like illuminated insects, each carrying people with their own dreams and struggles, people who didn't have to live up to the Reeves name. A junior executive approached, her enthusiasm genuine. "Mr. Reeves, I just wanted to say the way you insisted on keeping the rival company's research team intact was inspiring. Most acquisitions would have cut them immediately for the bottom line. Thank you, Diane. Those scientists have families who depend on them. We can be profitable without being cruel." As Diane walked away, Harrison overheard his brother Thomas's cutting remark to a group of investors. "My brother's always had a soft spot for the little people. Dad calls it his regrettable weakness. Fortunately, the rest of the family knows how to make the hard decisions when necessary." The investors laughed, their merriment fueled by expensive bourbon and the relief of being in the inner circle rather than on the outside. Harrison gripped the balcony railing tighter, his knuckles whitening. Despite building Horizon Tech from a small startup to a tech juggernaut, despite the billion-dollar deal he'd just closed, he knew in his father's eyes he would always be lacking. Because Harrison Reeves had something his father considered unforgivable in the business world: a conscience. He spotted his father gesturing for him to join the family conversation. Harrison straightened his tie, fixed his smile in place, and prepared for another round of subtle degradation wrapped in congratulatory language. A Reeves family specialty. Earlier that afternoon, in the penthouse suite where the Reeves family gathered before the celebration, Richard Reeves had cornered his eldest son. At 70, Richard still commanded every room with his imposing presence, steel-gray hair, and piercing blue eyes that had stared down competitors for decades. "The board is concerned about the terms you accepted," Richard said, swirling his scotch. "Keeping their entire R&D department, maintaining their charitable foundation. Your brothers would have closed this deal months ago, without all your ethical considerations." His voice dropped to a threatening whisper. "Don't forget I can replace you any time." Harrison stood his ground, though his heart raced. "The deal is done, father, and our stock price jumped 15% at the news. Despite your methods, not because of them," Richard corrected. Back at the bar, James Reeves, Harrison's youngest brother, raised his glass mockingly. "You've always been too soft, Harrison. Father was right to question making you CEO. Everyone knows you don't have what it takes to truly be a Reeves." Thomas nodded in agreement. The Reeves name was built on decisive action, not hand-holding and moral debates. Harrison felt the familiar pressure building in his chest, the weight of never measuring up, of being the family disappointment, despite his objectively impressive achievements. For 20 years he'd walked the tightrope between building a successful company and maintaining some semblance of integrity. Every decision scrutinized, every success attributed to luck, every principle he held regarded as weakness by the family whose approval he still, despite everything, desperately craved. "The deal is done," Harrison repeated firmly, though inside the doubt his family had planted was already taking root. 3 hours into the celebration, Harrison had switched from champagne to whiskey, neat. The party continued around him, but he'd retreated to a quiet corner of the bar, watching ice melt in his glass while wrestling with the demons his family had awakened. "Maybe they're right," he thought, ordering another drink. "Maybe I am too weak. Maybe all these principles I've held onto are just excuses for not having what it takes to be truly successful in their eyes." He pulled out his wallet and felt the small metal object that had rested there, unused for 5 years. The special master key his father had given him when he became CEO, a perk of being part of the Reeves empire. It opened any room in any hotel owned or invested in by Pinnacle Group, the Reeves hospitality division. "Every man needs opportunities," his father had said with a knowing smile when he presented it. Harrison had accepted it but vowed never to use it, disgusted by the implications and the stories he'd overheard about his brother's adventures. But tonight, with liquid courage burning in his veins and years of resentment boiling over, the key seemed to grow heavier in his pocket. A test, a rite of passage he'd always avoided. "Mr. Reeves, can I get you anything else?" the bartender asked, concerned at the CEO's darkening mood. "No, I'm going to my room," Harrison replied, standing unsteadily. He made his way to the elevator, the key clutched in his hand. The numbers blurred as the elevator descended to the guest floors. Floor 12, the hospitality suite where visiting executives stayed during negotiations. Harrison stumbled down the plush-carpeted hallway, mind fogged with alcohol and purpose. Room 106. He knew from the meeting schedule it was assigned to that brilliant female doctor from Boston, the one leading the medical research division he'd fought to preserve in the merger. He stood before the door, key in hand, battling with himself. This wasn't him. This had never been him. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe to be accepted by his family, to finally earn their respect, he needed to become someone else. The master key slid into the lock. The light turned green. The door opened silently to a darkened room. Harrison Reeves, son of privilege, stepped across a threshold that would change everything. The door closed behind Harrison with a soft click that seemed to echo in his conscience. He stood motionless, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness. The room was elegant but standard, a king-size bed, desk by the window, the glow of the city outside casting long shadows across the carpeted floor. In the bed lay Dr. Gloria Baran, her breathing deep and steady in sleep, unaware of the violation of her privacy occurring in that moment. Harrison's heart hammered against his ribs as reality crashed through his alcohol-fogged mind. What was he doing here? This wasn't some nameless person. This was Dr. Gloria Baran, brilliant oncologist, the woman whose research team he'd fought to keep intact during the merger. The woman who had thanked him personally for standing up for ethical research practices. Harrison took one step forward, then stopped. A lifetime of his father's expectations pressed against his back, urging him forward. 20 years of his brother's mockery echoed in his ears. Prove yourself. Be a real Reeves. Stop being so weak. But as he stood there poised between the man his family wanted him to be and the man he actually was, something inside Harrison finally broke. Not his resolve, but the chains of expectation that had bound him for decades. No, he whispered to himself, the word barely audible but carrying the weight of a scream. I am not this person. I will not become this to please them. The realization left him suddenly drained, as if he'd been running for years and only now allowed himself to stop. Harrison backed away from the bed, away from the line he'd nearly crossed, and collapsed into the armchair by the window. His head fell into his hands, tears burning behind his eyelids, not of shame for what he'd almost done, but of grief for the approval he would never receive. The city lights blurred outside the window as Harrison's exhaustion overcame him. The combination of alcohol, emotional turmoil, and the late hour pulled him into unconsciousness. His last thought before sleep claimed him was not of escape or self-preservation, but a strange sense of freedom that came with finally accepting that he could never be what his father wanted without losing himself completely. And so Harrison Reeves, CEO of Horizon Tech, fell asleep in a stranger's hotel room, not as an aggressor, but as a man who had finally chosen his own path, even if that choice had come dangerously late. The first rays of dawn crept across the plush carpet of room 106, gradually illuminating the sleeping figure in the armchair by the window. Harrison's head rested awkwardly against the chair's wing, his designer suit wrinkled, his appearance a far cry from the powerful CEO who had commanded attention at last night's celebration. Dr. Gloria Baran stirred beneath crisp white sheets, her eyes opening to the new day. A medical conference attendee accustomed to early mornings, she reached automatically for her phone to check the time. 6:17 a.m. As she sat up, stretching, her gaze swept across the room and froze on the unexpected figure by the window. In an instant she was fully alert, adrenaline surging through her system. She grabbed the hotel phone while simultaneously reaching for the water glass on the nightstand, a potential weapon if needed. "Who the hell are you?" she demanded, voice steady despite her racing pulse. "And how did you get in my room?" Harrison jolted awake, momentarily disoriented. His mind scrambled to make sense of unfamiliar surroundings, of the woman staring at him with a mixture of fear and fury. Then horror dawned on his face, as reality rushed back. "I am sorry," he stammered. But almost immediately something shifted in his expression. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by a practiced mask of authority. The face of a Reeves, his posture straightened, chin lifting slightly as years of conditioning took over. "This is my room," he stated with unearned confidence. "I'm Harrison Reeves, CEO of Horizon Tech. There's obviously been a mistake." Gloria's eyes narrowed, her grip on the phone tightening. "The mistake is you breaking into my room," she replied, thumb hovering over the numbers. "I've already called security." Harrison stood, brushing invisible lint from his suit as if inconvenienced. The transformation was complete, from remorseful intruder to entitled executive, in seconds. It was a defense mechanism so ingrained he barely recognized he was doing it. "Look, I'm sure we can resolve this without making a scene," he said, reaching for his wallet. "I'll have my assistant send you something nice for the inconvenience." He pulled out several $100 bills, offering them with practiced ease. "This should cover it." Gloria's expression hardened. "I don't want your money. What I want is for you to be held accountable for entering my room without permission." A sharp knock at the door interrupted their standoff. "Security, please open the door." Harrison's expression flickered between panic and relief. As Gloria moved to open the door, he composed himself, straightening his tie and preparing the practiced smile that had closed countless business deals. Two uniformed security officers entered, followed by Jeff Wilson, the hotel's head of security, a man Harrison recognized from previous Pinnacle Group events. "Jeff, good see you," Harrison said, his voice carrying the easy confidence of a man used to having problems disappear. "There's been a misunderstanding. This woman is overreacting to a simple room mix-up." Jeff's professional demeanor couldn't quite hide his discomfort. "Mr. Reeves, we need to discuss how you entered this room. Dr. Baran was the only registered guest. Obviously your system made an error," Harrison replied dismissively. "Sir, we have you on camera using a keycard that shouldn't have worked on this room," Jeff stated, his voice low but firm. "There appears to be a serious security breach." Harrison's confidence wavered momentarily before his training reasserted itself. "Then fix your security system," he snapped, though inwardly he felt sick at becoming exactly what he'd always despised. "I'm late for a meeting." As Harrison attempted to stride past the security team, a woman in a dark suit stepped into the doorway, effectively blocking his path. Her badge identified her as Lieutenant Diaz of the Hotel Crimes Division. "Miss Reeves, we need your statement about this incident before you leave," she said, her tone making it clear this wasn't a request. "Call my legal team," Harrison responded dismissively, reaching for his phone. "They'll handle this minor issue. Breaking and entering isn't minor." "Miss Reeves," Lieutenant Diaz countered, her gaze steady. "Neither is the pattern we're seeing at luxury hotels across the city." Harrison's composed facade cracked slightly. "Pattern? What pattern?" "Several incidents over the past year. Prominent men entering rooms that aren't theirs, using key cards that shouldn't work. Always at high-end hotels with connections to certain investment groups." Lieutenant Diaz's eyes narrowed. "Including your family's Pinnacle Group." For the first time since waking, genuine fear flashed across Harrison's face, not for himself, but at the implication that this wasn't an isolated incident, that perhaps his brother's adventures weren't just rumors after all. 2 hours later, Victoria Hamilton, Chief Counsel for Horizon Tech, strode into the executive conference room with the confident air of someone who had turned potential disasters into minor footnotes countless times before. Her tailored navy suit and pearl necklace projected both authority and respectability as she nodded to the hotel's general manager and two board members who had been hastily summoned. Dr. Gloria Baran sat across the table, her posture straight, expression resolute. Harrison occupied a chair in the corner, unnaturally quiet, his usual commanding presence diminished. "Dr. Baran," Victoria began, her voice smooth as polished marble. "First, please accept our sincere apologies for this unfortunate incident. We're prepared to offer you a significant settlement and an immediate upgrade to our presidential suite for the remainder of your stay." She slid an elegantly bound folder across the table. Inside lay a non-disclosure agreement and a check with several zeros. Gloria didn't even open it. "I'm not interested in compensation," she stated firmly. "I want to know how he got into my room. I want to know why hotel security seemed more concerned with quieting me than investigating a serious breach." Victoria's professional smile remained fixed in place. "Dr. Baran, perhaps we should discuss this privately. Mr. Reeves is a major investor in this hotel chain, and there are complexities to consider." "What complexities?" Gloria asked, eyes narrowing. "The fact that wealthy men can apparently access women's rooms at will. That your client had a key card that could open my door without authorization. Those seem like straightforward problems to me." Victoria leaned forward, voice lowering. "Dr. Baran, we value your research contributions and your partnership with Horizon Tech. It would be unfortunate if this misunderstanding affected that relationship." Gloria stood, gathering her belongings. "The only complexity is why his key worked on my door, and why you think money can make this disappear." She turned to face Harrison directly. "You fought to protect my research team during the merger. I respected you for that. Was it all just an act?" Harrison couldn't meet her eyes, the question hanging in the air as Gloria walked out, leaving Victoria staring at her retreating form with cool calculation. "She'll come around," Victoria assured the room. "They always do." The next morning, at the Horizon Tech headquarters, an emergency board meeting was called. "The situation is under control," Harrison stated to the assembled board members, his voice projecting a confidence he didn't quite feel. His father, Richard Reeves, sat at the far end of the table, eyes never leaving his son's face, measuring every word, every gesture. "Under control," demanded Eleanor Winslow, the board's most outspoken member. "A woman is accusing our CEO of breaking into her hotel room. How exactly is that under control?" Harrison straightened his tie, falling back on the Reeves family playbook. "It's being handled. Victoria has made a generous offer. The woman's being difficult, but everyone has a price." The words tasted like ash in his mouth. With each passing hour, he was becoming more like the man his father had always wanted. Ruthless, entitled, willing to use power and money to solve problems rather than face consequences. "And the security breach?" asked another board member. "How did you gain access to her room?" Harrison felt his father's gaze boring into him. "A technical glitch," he replied smoothly. "Nothing more." "This technical glitch," Eleanor pressed. "Has it happened before?" Richard Reeves cleared his throat, effectively silencing the question. "I'm sure Harrison and the legal team have everything well in hand. The priority now is ensuring this distraction doesn't impact our stock price or the merger finalization." Harrison nodded gratefully to his father, even as self-loathing washed over him. For the first time in his life, his father was supporting him publicly, but only because Harrison was finally acting like a true Reeves. "We expect this matter to be resolved by the end of the day," Richard concluded, standing to signal the meeting's end. "The Reeves name has weathered far worse storms." The board members gathered their materials, some lingering to speak quietly with Richard, others hastening to return to damage control. Harrison collected his notes, exchanging a brief cold nod with his father, before they went their separate ways. Richard toward a waiting car, Harrison toward his private office. As Harrison approached his office suite, he spotted Jeff Wilson, the hotel's head of security, sitting in the reception area with two uniformed officers. The sight stopped him short. What was hotel security doing at Horizon Tech headquarters? Before he could process this unexpected development, his assistant rushed toward him, tablet in hand, face ashen. "Mr. Reeves," she said breathlessly, "you need to see this right now." She placed the tablet in his hands, screen displaying a live news broadcast. Jeff Wilson watched intently, noting how the blood drained from Harrison's face as he recognized Dr. Gloria Baran, standing confidently before a group of reporters outside the Carlyle Hotel. "This isn't about one incident or one CEO," Gloria's voice rang out clearly from the tablet. "This is about a systemic failure to protect people when the person violating their safety has power and influence." The camera panned to show several reporters crowding closer, sensing a bigger story than they'd anticipated. "After speaking out about what happened to me this morning, I've already heard from 3 other women with similar experiences at hotels owned by Pinnacle Group, Mr. Reeves' hotel investment company." Gloria held up her phone. 3 women who woke up to find unauthorized men in their rooms. 3 women who were offered money to stay quiet. 3 women who were made to feel that their safety mattered less than a powerful family's reputation. Jeff Wilson's gaze remained fixed on Harrison's face, studying his reaction with careful attention. The CEO's typical mask of control was crumbling, revealing something that looked remarkably like genuine shock. "Sir, I think we should speak privately," Jeff suggested quietly, rising from his seat. Harrison barely heard him, transfixed by Gloria's calm, measured words as she continued to dismantle the carefully constructed Reeves family mythology in real time. His phone buzzed in his pocket. His father's name appeared on the screen. Mechanically, Harrison motioned for Jeff to follow him into his private office and closed the door before answering the call. "What the hell have you done, Harrison?" Richard's voice was deadly quiet, more frightening than if he'd been shouting. "This could tank the merger and our stock price. I knew you didn't have the spine for this business." "I'll handle it," Harrison insisted, feeling trapped between the man he was supposed to be and the man he actually was. "Like your brothers handled the incidents in Chicago last year, and San Francisco." Richard's voice turned cold as winter. "The system we built to protect the family won't work if you create messes too big to clean up. This is why I've always favored your brothers. They know how to be discreet with their indulgences." Harrison gripped the phone tighter, bile rising in his throat. "What are you saying?" Don't be naive. It doesn't suit you, Richard snapped. The master key has been a Reeves family asset for years. Your brothers know how to use it without creating headlines. The revelation that his brothers were responsible for previous incidents hit Harrison like a physical blow. He'd suspected, privately feared, but having it confirmed made him feel complicit in their actions through his silence. Father, if what you're saying is true, what I'm saying, Richard cut him off, is fix this, now, or the CEO position won't be the only thing you lose. Back at the hotel security office, Lieutenant Diaz leaned closer to the monitor, brow furrowed as she scrolled through the hotel's security logs. Something wasn't adding up. Access records for the 12th floor showed inconsistencies, timestamps that didn't match camera footage, entries that appeared to have been modified. When did these changes occur? She asked the nervous IT technician beside her. About an hour after we confronted Mr. Reeves, he admitted. I noticed because I was pulling the records you requested, and suddenly portions were different. Lieutenant Diaz straightened, her expression grim. Someone's trying to erase evidence. We need to move quickly before they cover more tracks. She turned to Gloria, who had been observing quietly from the corner. Your coming forward has exposed something bigger than one incident. This appears systematic. Meanwhile, at Horizon Tech, Harrison's return to the boardroom was met with stony silence. The emergency session had reconvened after Gloria's press conference. The mood dramatically shifted from the morning's measured concern to open hostility. 3 other women, Eleanor Winslow stated coldly. 3 other incidents at Pinnacle Properties, and you sat there this morning and called it a technical glitch. Harrison stared at the polished table surface, feeling the weight of years of complicity crushing him. His brothers sat smirking at the far end, beside their father, whose face remained impassive. Harrison Richards' voice cut through the tension. Perhaps you should let your brothers and me handle this from here. You're clearly overwhelmed. Something in his father's dismissive tone, in his brothers' smug expressions, in the knowledge that they had done this before and would continue doing it with impunity, finally shattered Harrison's lifetime of calculated compliance. He slammed his hand on the table, rising to his feet. This has to stop. The room fell silent, shocked by the outburst from the typically restrained CEO. I didn't build this company from $1 million to $1 billion so we could act like we're above basic human decency, Harrison continued, voice shaking with barely controlled rage. I will not let you use my company's power to protect a system that violates people's safety and dignity. Richard's eyes narrowed dangerously. Watch yourself, son. Remember who you're speaking to. I know exactly who I'm speaking to, Harrison replied quietly. That's the problem. I think this whole situation is making you think irrationally. Harrison, security, please escort him out so he can have a few days of rest while we handle issues. Immediately a security guard who was standing at the door suddenly walked to him. Sir, please follow me. Harrison wanted to resist, to prove how much he wanted all this to stop, to expose everything right there. But he knew better than to struggle with a security guard who was just doing his job. So he adjusted his tie, glaring at his brothers who now looked at him with disgust, and then walked out while the security guard followed behind, making sure he got to his car. At his luxury penthouse apartment that evening, Harrison poured himself a drink with unsteady hands, condensation beading on the glass like the cold sweat on his forehead. The events of the day replayed in his mind. Gloria's press conference, his father's admission, his own public outburst that had ended with him being escorted from the Horizon Tech building for a few days of rest. A soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Harrison hesitated, then moved to answer, half expecting his father's security team. Instead, he found Jeff Wilson, the hotel's head of security, standing in the hallway. May I come in? Jeff asked, glancing nervously down the corridor. I shouldn't be here, but there's something you need to know. Harrison stepped aside, allowing Jeff to enter. The security chief moved with the cautious efficiency of a man accustomed to observing rather than being observed. They're erasing everything, Mr. Reeves, Jeff said without preamble, his voice low. Security footage, keycard logs, witness statements, just like the other times with your brothers. Harrison's glass paused halfway to his lips. How do you know about the other times? Jeff placed a small flash drive on the glass coffee table. Because I've been documenting them for years. This contains backups of every incident involving the Reeves family at Pinnacle Properties. Chicago, San Francisco, Boston, all of it. Why would you risk your job like this? Harrison asked, staring at the tiny device that contained enough evidence to destroy his family's empire. I've watched you for years, Jeff replied, studying Harrison's face. The way you interact with staff, how you handle problems. You're not like the rest of your family. When I saw your face during Dr. Baran's press conference, I knew you were genuinely shocked. I thought maybe, just maybe, you might be the one to finally break the cycle. Harrison sank into a chair, the weight of Jeff's words settling on him. You don't understand what you're asking. This would ruin everything. The company, my family name. With respect, Mr. Reeves, Jeff said quietly. I think you're starting to understand that some things deserve to be ruined if they're built on hurting others. Well, you can go, Jeff. I'll think about it. He finally responded after a moment of silence. My dear family, as our story reaches this pivotal moment, I'm curious. Have you ever witnessed someone stand up against a broken system like this, even at great personal cost? Or perhaps you've been that person yourself. Share it with us. Your perspective strengthens our bond as a family. Also, drop a heart in the comments if you believe in the power of one person to make a difference. And let's see if Harrison finds the courage to do what's right. Harrison sat alone in his darkened living room, the flash drive on the table before him. The city lights creating patterns across the floor as clouds passed overhead. Jeff had left hours ago, but his words remained. Harrison's phone buzzed continuously. His father, brothers, the board members, all demanding he fall in line. All expecting the usual Reeves response: deny, discredit, destroy. The family playbook that had protected them for generations. But all Harrison could see was Gloria Baran's face, as she asked him if his ethical stance during the merger had been an act. All he could think about were the other women who had faced his brothers in their hotel rooms and been silenced. When Jeff returned with Lieutenant Diaz the next morning, Harrison was waiting, his decision made. I've spent my whole life trying not to be my father or my brothers, while simultaneously trying to earn their respect, he told them, his voice steadier than it had been in days. I built Horizon Tech with integrity, despite their constant pressure to cut corners, to be ruthless, to stop caring about the human cost of success. Harrison gestured to the documents spread across his dining table, printouts of emails, financial records, security protocols. That night I almost became exactly what I hate, just to prove I belonged. But standing in Dr. Baran's room, something stopped me. Some last shred of the person I actually am refused to cross that line. Lieutenant Diaz picked up one of the documents. This is a complete accounting of the master key system, how every approved key was issued, who has them, how they work. Yes, Harrison confirmed. And there's more, records of settlements, documentation of how incidents were covered up, the names of everyone involved in creating and maintaining the system. Everything needed to dismantle it completely. You understand what this will mean for you? Jeff asked quietly. Harrison nodded, a strange sense of peace washing over him despite the storm he knew was coming. Yes, but some systems need to be broken, no matter who built them. Later that day, Harrison stood in the center of the Carlyle's opulent lobby, watching the entrance doors. He had called ahead to the medical conference organizers, learning that Dr. Baran always arrived early to prepare for the day's sessions. His heart pounded as he spotted her walking through the revolving doors, confidence in her stride despite the media storm surrounding her. She noticed him immediately, her steps faltering briefly before she straightened her shoulders and continued forward. The few early risers in the lobby pretended not to stare at the pair whose confrontation had made the morning news. Dr. Baran, Harrison began, his voice quiet but steady. May I speak with you? I think your lawyer has said enough, Gloria replied coolly, moving to step around him. No lawyers, no PR team, just me, Harrison said, raising his hands slightly to show he came alone. 5 minutes, please. Something in his expression, the absence of the entitled arrogance she'd seen the previous day, made Gloria pause. 5 minutes, she agreed, gesturing to a secluded seating area near the fireplace. Once seated, Harrison took a deep breath. "You're right," he stated simply. "I've been protected by a system that shouldn't exist. I've never had to face consequences, and neither has my family. That stops now." Gloria's expression remained skeptical, years of professional caution keeping her guard raised. Harrison placed a thick manila folder on the table between them. "This contains documentation of security breaches at multiple hotels owned by Pinnacle Group. System features designed to allow certain guests special access. Records of complaints that were buried, settlement agreements that were forced. It's everything Lieutenant Diaz would need to build a case." Gloria made no move to touch the folder. "Why would you give me this?" Harrison met her gaze directly, something vulnerable now visible in his eye. "Because when I sat in your room that night I realized I was at a crossroads. I could finally become the man my father wanted me to be, or I could be the man I actually am." He leaned forward slightly, voice dropping. "When I saw myself through your eyes the next morning, I hated what I'd almost become. This system of privilege and protection didn't start with me, but it can end with me." Gloria studied him for a long moment, her medical training helping her read the subtle signs of a man in genuine crisis. Slowly, deliberately, she reached for the folder. "I'll need your testimony to back this up," she said. Harrison nodded. "You'll have it, all of it." The next 3 weeks unfolded in a blur of depositions, evidence reviews and late-night strategy sessions. Lieutenant Diaz assembled a task force dedicated to the case, which grew larger as more victims came forward and more powerful names became implicated. Harrison found himself stripped of his company access, his father having moved swiftly to isolate him once his cooperation with authorities became known. His corporate credit cards were cancelled, his executive assistant reassigned, his belongings from his office delivered to his apartment door in cardboard boxes. Yet despite losing the trappings of his former life, Harrison felt a strange growing sense of purpose as he worked with Lieutenant Diaz's team to dismantle the system he had unknowingly helped protect. Gloria became his unexpected ally, using her medical conference connections to identify other potential victims, and lending her growing public platform to keep attention focused on the investigation, rather than allowing it to be buried by expensive PR campaigns. One evening, as they reviewed documents in a small conference room at the police station, the professional walls between them began to crack. "Why oncology?" Harrison asked, breaking a comfortable silence. "Of all the medical specialties, why cancer research?" Gloria looked up from her notes, surprised by the personal question. She hesitated, then set down her pen. "My mother died of breast cancer when I was 12, she replied, her voice softening with the memory. "The doctor who treated her, she was so compassionate, so brilliant. I wanted to be like her, to help people when they're facing their darkest moments, to give them hope through science and genuine care." Harrison nodded, understanding flooding his features. "That explains why you fought so hard to protect your research team during the merger. It wasn't just professional, it was personal. Everything worthwhile is personal in some way," Gloria observed. "What about you? Why build Horizon from scratch when your family already had an empire?" "Because it was mine," Harrison answered simply. "Something I could build with principles different from theirs. Something that could help people rather than just extracting profit from them." Their eyes met across the table, a moment of recognition passing between them. "You are," Harrison said softly. "I'm what? Brilliant and compassionate, like the doctor who treated your mother. I've never met anyone who stood their ground like you did." Gloria's smile was tentative but genuine. "And I've never met a CEO willing to burn down his own house to do what's right." The moment was interrupted by Lieutenant Diaz entering with fresh evidence, but something had shifted between them, a foundation of mutual respect forming amid the wreckage of his former life. As days passed, their professional collaboration evolved. They began sharing meals between meetings, exchanging personal stories during breaks in testimony preparation. Harrison found himself drawn to her integrity and directness. Gloria discovered layers to the man beyond the privileged CEO she'd initially encountered. Neither acknowledged the growing connection explicitly, both focused on the case that now consumed their lives, a case that was building toward an inevitable public revelation. 6 weeks after the incident at the Carlisle, Harrison Reeves sat alone at a witness table facing a panel of stern-faced officials. The Congressional Committee on Corporate Ethics and Consumer Protection had convened an emergency hearing after the scale of the security breach scandal became clear. Behind him, the gallery was filled with media, industry representatives, and victims, including Gloria, who sat in silent support despite her own scheduled testimony later that day. His father and brothers were notably absent, their lawyers having advised against appearing in the same room as Harrison. "Mr. Reeves," began the committee chairwoman, "you've provided this committee with extensive documentation regarding what you characterize as a systematic security override at luxury hotels nationwide. Would you please explain in your own words what this system entailed and how it operated?" Harrison leaned toward the microphone, his voice steady. "The access wasn't a glitch. It was a feature designed for people like my family, people who grew up believing that enough money and influence could make any problem go away." He detailed the technical aspects: how the master keys were created, how the regular security protocols were bypassed, how the system was hidden from regular hotel staff and even most executives. "And who had knowledge of this system?" the chairwoman pressed. "Board members of Pinnacle Group hotels, key investors, family members of major shareholders." Harrison paused, swallowing hard. "And me, I knew the system existed, though I never used it until that night at the Carlyle." A murmur rippled through the gallery. "Why come forward now, Mr. Reeves? Why expose a system that benefited you and your family for years?" Harrison's gaze briefly met Gloria's in the gallery before returning to the committee. "Because silence makes you complicit. I've been silent for years out of fear and a misguided desire to belong. That silence protected a system that hurts people." His testimony continued for hours, methodically exposing networks of privilege and protection that extended far beyond his own family. Names of powerful hotel chains, investment groups, and influential individuals filled the record. With each revelation, the scale of the scandal grew until it encompassed dozens of luxury hotel brands worldwide. When it was over, Harrison stepped out of the hearing room into a hurricane of camera flashes and shouted questions. Security guided him through the chaos to a quiet side room where Gloria waited. "It's done," he said simply, exhaustion evident in his voice. "Just beginning," she corrected gently. "The committee has months of investigation ahead, but you did it. You broke the dam." Within days, the consequences cascaded through the business world. Horizon Tech's board voted unanimously to accept Harrison's resignation as CEO. The company's stock plummeted temporarily before stabilizing under new leadership. The Pinnacle Group began selling off hotel properties at a fraction of their value as investors fled the toxic brand. Harrison watched from the sidelines as the empire his family had built began to crumble. He felt neither victory nor defeat, only a quiet certainty that he had finally chosen the right path, regardless of what it cost him. The man his father had wanted him to be would have protected the system at all costs. The man Harrison actually was had destroyed it instead. The lights of Manhattan glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows as Harrison pushed open the door to his penthouse. The space felt different now, colder, emptier, as if the building itself knew its owner had fallen from grace. His phone had finally stopped buzzing with calls and texts. The world had said what it needed to say about Harrison Reeves, and now silence reigned. He tossed his keys onto the marble counter, not bothering with the lights. 3 weeks of testimony, depositions, and media scrutiny had hollowed him out. Tomorrow would bring more of the same, another day of watching his life's work being dismantled, piece by piece. A movement in the darkness startled him. Harrison reached for the light switch, heart racing, only to find Gloria rising from his sofa. "Your doorman let me up," she explained softly. "I thought you shouldn't be alone tonight." Harrison stared at her, momentarily speechless. In the chaos of the hearings, they had barely spoken outside of strategy meetings and courtroom hallways. "How did you know?" he finally asked. "I saw your face when they announced the board's decision to dissolve the foundation," she replied, referring to the charitable organization Harrison had created at Horizon Tech. "I recognized that look." Something inside Harrison cracked. The careful composure he'd maintained through weeks of public scrutiny finally shattered. He sank onto the sofa, head in his hands. "I've lost everything," he whispered, voice raw with emotion. The company, my family, my identity, 20 years of work gone. For what? Gloria sat beside him, not touching but close enough that he could feel her presence. No, she said firmly, you found yourself. For the first time you're free to be who you really are, not who they wanted you to be. Harrison looked up, meeting her gaze. And who is that? Who am I without all this? He gestured to the expensive apartment, the trappings of success that had defined him for so long. That's what you get to find out, Gloria replied. That's the gift hiding inside this loss. They talked through the night, the conversation flowing from professional to personal as barriers continued to fall. Gloria shared stories of her patience, of resilience in the face of devastating diagnoses. Harrison spoke of his early dreams for Horizon Tech before his family's influence had begun to corrupt his vision. As dawn broke over the city, they sat side by side on his balcony, watching the sunrise paint the skyscrapers gold. Thank you, Harrison said simply, for seeing something in me worth waiting for. Meanwhile, the Reeves empire continued its public collapse throughout the summer. Pinnacle Group hotels were sold off to competitors at reduced prices. Horizon Tech underwent a complete board restructuring. The family's once untouchable reputation lay in tatters, their name now synonymous with corruption and abuse of power. Richard and James Reeves faced federal charges related to obstruction of justice and evidence tampering. Though their expensive legal teams ensured they avoided jail time, settling instead for probation and substantial fines, the court of public opinion proved far less forgiving. Former business associates distanced themselves, social invitations dried up, and the Reeves name was quietly removed from charitable boards and university buildings across the country. On the final day of sentencing hearings, Harrison encountered his father outside the courthouse. Richard Reeves stood at the bottom of the stone steps, looking older and smaller than Harrison remembered, but his eyes still burned with the same cold fury that had driven him for decades. You've destroyed everything I built, Richard seethed, stepping into Harrison's path. Our name, our reputation, our business. I always knew you were too weak to be a true Reeves. Harrison absorbed the accusation without flinching. Around them, reporters pretended not to eavesdrop while frantically taking notes. No, Harrison replied quietly. Conscience isn't weakness, father. It's taken me too long to understand that. Richard's laugh was bitter. Conscience, you think that will comfort you when you're broke and forgotten, when everything you worked for is gone. Not everything is gone, Harrison countered. Just the things built on falsehood and privilege. I'm rebuilding my life on something better than fear and power. With her, Richard sneered, glancing toward Gloria, who stood waiting at a respectful distance. Your doctor wouldn't save you from financial ruin. I know, but she's helped me save myself from becoming you, Harrison replied. That's worth more than every dollar we ever had. As Richard turned away, Harrison felt a weight lift from his shoulders, the burden of seeking approval from a man incapable of giving it. For 38 years his father's judgment had been the measure of his worth. Now, standing amid the wreckage of his former life, Harrison found himself finally free of that metric. He walked toward Gloria, neither of them looking back at the diminished figure of Richard Reeves as he climbed into his waiting car. The legal consequences for Harrison's role in the scandal were significant but tempered by his cooperation. The judge handed down a sentence of community service and substantial fines rather than jail time, acknowledging his instrumental role in exposing the system. The court recognizes that Mr. Reeves' actions, while initially problematic, ultimately served the public good, the judge stated during sentencing. His testimony has enabled our justice system to hold powerful interests accountable in ways previously impossible. The financial penalties, combined with legal fees and the loss of his position at Horizon Tech, forced Harrison to liquidate most of his assets. The penthouse went on the market, along with the vacation properties, the art collection, and the investment portfolio built over 2 decades. 2 months after the sentencing, Harrison stood in his emptied apartment, surrounded by packed boxes, when Gloria arrived. Ready? She asked, surveying the bare walls and vacant spaces where luxury furniture had once stood. Almost, Harrison replied, closing the final box. Just saying goodbye to the old life. Gloria hesitated, then stepped closer. I know we discussed you finding your own place, But my apartment has that spare room. It's not much, nothing like this, but it would give you time to figure out your next steps. The offer hung between them, significant in its simplicity. Harrison looked at her, understanding the weight of what she was suggesting. Are you sure? Your colleagues, your reputation, being associated with me right now isn't exactly career-enhancing. Gloria smiled. I've never been particularly concerned with what others think of my choices. That's something we have in common. 3 days later, Harrison moved his remaining possessions into Gloria's modest apartment in Brooklyn. The adjustment was both jarring and refreshing. From 4,000 square feet of luxury to a cozy space filled with books, medical journals, and simple, practical furniture. Together they began shaping the idea that had formed during their late-night conversations. The Accountability Initiative, a non-profit organization dedicated to creating transparency in corporate practices and supporting whistleblowers who exposed abuses of power. On a cool autumn evening, they sat at Gloria's small kitchen table reviewing potential board members for the initiative. The kitchen window was open, street sounds drifting up from below, so different from the insulated silence of his former penthouse. Do you regret it? Gloria asked suddenly. Giving up everything? Harrison considered the question seriously, looking around the simple apartment that had somehow in just a few weeks begun to feel more like home than his luxury penthouse ever had. This, he said, gesturing to their surroundings, to the work spread before them, to her is the most real my life has ever been. 6 months after founding the Accountability Initiative, Harrison and Gloria stood backstage at their organization's first public conference. The event had drawn an unexpected crowd. Corporate compliance officers, ethics professors, journalists, and former whistleblowers from various industries gathered to discuss the transformation of power structures in business. Nervous? Gloria asked, adjusting Harrison's tie. Terrified, he admitted with a small smile, but ready. Gloria took the stage first, her expertise as a medical researcher lending weight to her arguments about systemic change. Accountability isn't about punishment, she told the attentive audience. It's about creating environments where ethical behavior is the default, not the exception, where safeguards protect people rather than power, where speaking up is valued, not penalized. She detailed the initiative's 3-pronged approach: policy advocacy, legal support for whistleblowers, and corporate culture consulting. The audience responded with enthusiastic applause, particularly when she announced their first major victory: federal legislation strengthening hotel security protocols nationwide. When it was Harrison's turn, he stood at the podium looking out at faces both skeptical and supportive. The former CEO had become a polarizing figure, villain to some, hero to others. He took a deep breath and began. I entered Dr. Baran's room believing I needed to prove myself to my family by becoming someone I'm not, he stated plainly. That moment forced me to confront, not just my behavior but an entire system built to protect people like my family from accountability. As he spoke, he noticed some audience members shifting uncomfortably, executives recognizing aspects of their own corporate cultures in his description. We build these systems incrementally, Harrison continued. A special exception here, a blind eye there, small compromises that accumulate until the entire structure exists to protect power rather than people. He described his journey from entitled CEO to advocate, careful to neither glorify his role nor minimize his complicity. What I never expected, Harrison concluded, was that in losing everything I thought mattered, I would find what actually does: purpose, integrity, and the courage to stand for something larger than my own comfort or success. The standing ovation that followed surprised him, not for its enthusiasm, but for its sincerity. People approached him afterward, not as a fallen business celebrity, but as someone with valuable insights on transforming broken systems from within. Autumn painted Portland's trees in brilliant golds and reds as Harrison led Gloria up the stairs to the rooftop garden of their new building. The modest 4-story structure housed both the Western office of the Accountability Initiative and a handful of residential apartments, including the one they now shared. Are you going to tell me why we're coming up here at sunset when we have dinner reservations in 30 minutes? Gloria asked, amused by Harrison's uncharacteristic nervousness. You'll see, he replied, opening the door to the rooftop. Gloria gasped softly. The garden had been transformed. String lights twinkled among the plants. A small table was set with champagne, and the entire space glowed with warmth despite the crisp October air. "Happy anniversary," Harrison said softly. Gloria turned to him, confusion crossing her features. "Our first date was in May." "I'm not commemorating our first date," Harrison explained, taking her hands. "1 year ago today, I woke up in your hotel room and you changed the course of my life." Recognition dawned in Gloria's eyes. The Carlyle I hadn't realized. "I did," Harrison said. "I've thought about it every day since, how one moment of conscience, one decision, can alter everything." He guided her to the edge of the rooftop where they could see the city lights spread out below them, so different from the Manhattan skyline they'd left behind. "This year has been transformative," Harrison continued. "I went from a man who measured worth in dollar signs and acquisitions to someone who finally understands what actually matters." He turned to face her fully. "I never imagined my life would take this turn, but I can't imagine it without you now." Gloria's eyes widened as Harrison lowered himself to one knee, producing a simple ring with a single emerald, her birthstone. "It's not a diamond," he said with a small smile. "My budget isn't what it used to be." "It's perfect," she whispered, her scientific composure momentarily forgotten. "Gloria Baran, will you marry me? Not the man I was, but the man you helped me become." "Yes," she answered, without hesitation. Then with the quick wit he'd grown to love, she added, "Who could have predicted that waking up to find a CEO in my hotel room would lead to this?" They married in early spring, in a small ceremony at a local botanical garden. The guest list was modest. Lieutenant Diaz attended with her husband. Jeff Wilson flew in from New York, and Gloria's medical colleagues mixed with the small staff of the Accountability Initiative. Harrison's family was noticeably absent. His father had declined the invitation with a terse note. His brothers hadn't responded at all. While the rejection stung, Harrison found himself surrounded by a chosen family that valued him for reasons beyond his last name or net worth. As they exchanged vows beneath flowering cherry trees, Harrison realized he'd never felt more wealthy than in this moment, rich with purpose and authentic connection. With the Accountability Initiative gaining national recognition, Harrison decided to return to his technological roots, but on his own terms. He established a small tech consultancy focused on ethical business practices, helping companies identify and eliminate systemic issues before they became crises. "I used to build businesses to maximize profit," he explained to a client. "Now I help them maximize integrity while remaining profitable. They're not mutually exclusive." His modest office in downtown Portland couldn't have been more different from his former executive suite, but Harrison found the work deeply satisfying. Unlike his previous role, success was measured not in stock prices, but in companies transformed and employees empowered. Meanwhile, Gloria continued her groundbreaking oncology research, dividing her time between clinical work at Portland General Hospital and directing the medical ethics division of the Accountability Initiative. Her perspective as both a physician and an advocate made her a sought-after speaker at medical conferences nationwide. Their work kept them busy but aligned, both committed to creating systems that served people rather than exploiting them. Their evening conversations often blended personal and professional, each drawing inspiration from the other's challenges and breakthroughs. One crisp autumn evening, as Harrison prepared dinner in their apartment kitchen, Gloria entered with an unusual expression, a mixture of joy and uncertainty. "Everything okay?" he asked, setting down the knife he'd been using to chop vegetables. Gloria placed a small envelope on the counter. The test results came back. Harrison looked from the envelope to his wife's face, realization dawning. They had discussed starting a family, but agreed to let nature determine the timeline while they focused on building their. With trembling fingers, he opened the envelope, reading the conclusive results. "Positive, we're having a child," he whispered, the full weight of the news settling over him. Gloria nodded, her scientific detachment momentarily replaced by wonder. "A boy, according to the genetic screening." Harrison pulled her into an embrace, overcome with emotion. "I never thought I'd have this," he admitted. "A family built on love rather than obligation or legacy." Later that week, as they discussed potential names, Gloria suggested something unexpected. "What about Jeffrey?" Harrison looked up, surprised. After Jeff Wilson, the security chief. Gloria nodded. He was the one who had the courage to help you break the cycle. Without him, none of this would exist. Not the initiative, not our relationship, not the world our son will be born into. Harrison considered this, deeply moved by the suggestion. Jeffrey Baran Reeves, he said, testing the name. A name that represents the best of both our stories. As they sat together planning for their child's future, Harrison marveled at how completely his definition of success had transformed from corner offices and billion-dollar deals to this quiet moment of authentic connection and purpose. 3 years later, the Portland skyline glowed with the warm hues of sunset as Harrison and Gloria stood on their modest balcony, watching their 2-year-old son Jeffrey play with wooden blocks on a blanket at their feet. The toddler stacked the colorful cubes with intense concentration, his features a perfect blend of both parents. 3 years ago today, Harrison mused, holding up his glass of sparkling cider in deference to Gloria's second pregnancy. Who would have thought that walking into the wrong hotel room would lead to all this? Gloria clinked her glass against his. A single moment of conscience, she reflected. One decision to be the person you actually are rather than who you were expected to be. They had developed a tradition of marking not just their wedding anniversary, but this more complicated date as well, the catalyst that had brought them together and transformed both their lives. I received a letter from my father yesterday, Harrison said quietly, watching their son arrange blocks in careful rows. First communication in over 2 years. Gloria raised an eyebrow. What did he want? To meet his grandson. He's dying. Pancreatic cancer. Says he wants to make amends before the end. And what will you do? Gloria asked, her medical training recognizing the gravity of the diagnosis. Harrison watched his son for a long moment before answering. I'll go, not for his sake but for mine, and for Jeffrey, to show him that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but it does mean moving forward. Gloria squeezed his hand, understanding the complexity of his decision. That's what true wealth is, you know, not the access or influence your family once had, not the power to avoid consequences. It's the courage to choose what's right, even when it's difficult. Harrison nodded, watching as their son abandoned his blocks and toddled toward them, arms outstretched. He lifted the boy, feeling the simple weight of love and responsibility. To unexpected beginnings, Harrison said softly, raising his glass again, and to the beautiful journey that follows. Gloria completed, her free hand resting on her growing belly, their daughter's future taking shape within. My dear family, as we come to the end of Harrison and Gloria's story, I hope you carry with you the understanding that transformation is always possible. No matter your past, your family history, or the expectations others have placed on you, you always have the power to choose differently. Sometimes the most courageous act isn't standing up to others, it's standing up to the version of yourself you've been pressured to become. Harrison's journey reminds us that true worth isn't measured in dollars, power, or status, but in the ability to look at yourself in the mirror and be proud of the person you see. I want to thank you for spending this hour with me. Each moment you share here means the world to me. If you found value in this story, please consider subscribing to our channel and joining our family of thoughtful souls. And remember, in those moments when you feel most alone or most tempted to compromise your values, there's someone out here, me and this entire family, believing in your capacity to choose what's right. Until next time, may your heart be light, your path be clear, and your courage never falter. Take care of yourselves and each other. Bye.